do I need to add muscle? Do I want to hold on to, or do I need to build muscle? I would argue that the smartest thing that we can possibly do is pack on as much muscle as humanly possible for as long as possible, so that when we do start to lose it, we have more to lose, because it is not easy for us to pack on muscle. I know the minute I say that, I strike fear in women's hearts. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get big. And I will say 40 years of this, right? I used to take women on field trips to Gold's Gym in Venice, the mecca of bodybuilding. I have never seen a woman get big unless she's been taking anabolic steroids, ever. I've helped weight train more women. Never happens. Women get smaller when they weight train because muscle is metabolic spank. So it holds everything in tighter, right? And boosts your metabolism, requires more that muscle protein turnover is an expensive process.
Hi, I'm Kelley Namiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast, a lifestyle podcast where we'll talk about wellness, motherhood, and some really exciting things in between. My goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through my conversations with our experts and guests, I hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Balancing Chaos podcast. I'm thrilled to welcome a very exceptional guest to the show today, JJ Virgin. She is a trailblazer in the world of nutrition, hormonal health, and fitness. Her journey into the realm of wellness began with an unyielding passion for the healing power of nutrition, aiming to redefine perceptions about aging and longevity. JJ is the mastermind behind two multi-million-dollar enterprises and is the brainchild behind an influential mindshare collaborative that I've actually been to myself. It's a fantastic, fantastic event. That is pioneering professional community and has fostered numerous New York Times bestsellers, PBS specials, and seven-figure brands. Join us as we delve into some really incredible insights and the transformative wisdom that JJ brings to the table. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to chat with you. And one of the first things that I wanted to talk about, because I heard you talking about it on another podcast, and I think that every woman out there needs this information, is your thoughts on Ozempic.
Oh boy, that would become such a thing. So I've been at this for 40 years.
Yeah.
And so I've watched as we've become progressively, more overweight, more obese, and more metabolically unhealthy. In fact, one of my early mentors said, you don't lose weight to get healthy. You get healthy to lose weight. And I would take that even further to say you have to get metabolically healthy to be able to hold on to muscle and lose fat. And, so just watching this and then being on the Dr. Phil weight loss challenges for years and just kind of just being such in the thick of weight loss all these years, I actually created a course called Overcoming Weight Loss Resistance. And I went around the country with a couple other practitioners and trained for a couple of years, trained doctors on all the things that could get in the way of you losing weight and cause you to gain weight. Things like insulin resistance and stress and gut dysbiosis and thyroid, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you look at this and you go, we have more information than ever. I'd argue that might even be the problem. There's so much information. Yes. We have more information than ever. And yet we are like right now, the stats, it's hard to keep up on the stats because every time you turn around, they are worse. Like less than 7% of the population is metabolically healthy. Yep. Over 41% are obese. Over 70% are overweight or obese. And then you look at the kids, 1 in 5 kids are obese. When I was growing up, there was one girl who was overweight. And it was like a big deal. And everyone teased her. One girl, and she probably, you look back now and she'd be considered normal weight. Yeah. Right. And then that doesn't even count the normal weight obesity issue that we have. And I remember reading some research about 10 years ago where they were doing MRIs and they said half the people they saw who were of normal weight were skinny fat, toe-feet, thin outside, fat inside. So you look at this and go, what a mess. And then you hear everyone railing back against things like Ozempic and, so Mounjaro, basically Ozempic, all the weight loss drugs.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, like, we've got to do something. Everyone was concerned about the pandemic. This is the pandemic. Like this, and you have an overweight child, their chance of being an overweight adult is 70%. Like this is something that we have to do something about. Now, the big argument about these weight loss drugs is that you lose muscle. But do you know what happens when you diet? If you don't diet correctly, you lose muscle. It's no different. So if I were the benevolent dictator, what I would do is I would have everybody do a DEXA scan first, find out what their body composition is. I would toss scales out forever. They are stupid. I would only do some type of body composition so we could really know what the weight's made up of, and not only know body fat, but know visceral adipose tissue, which is the dangerous fat, and then know skeletal muscle so we can track and improve it. Then make sure that they're tracking their food. They're getting optimal levels of protein, not the ridiculous RDA that's going to like basically create sarcopenic, adults. And we make sure they're doing resistance training and sleeping, and we change the world. So we have to do something to give people the edge to be able to get past this. Because when you get to this point where everybody is now, where they're so insulin resistant that they can't access stored fat for fuel, that they're hungry all the time. Now they've been used to eating these ultra processed foods that have damaged their metabolism, that have created more insulin resistance, more visceral adipose tissue. They've destroyed their satiety and their satiety signals. I mean, it's just, you got to do something. And this is the thing. And when you look at it beyond just what it will do for helping people lose weight, beyond satiety, it's also improving insulin sensitivity. What about the fact that there's also studies now showing that's neuroprotective? It can help with kidney health, heart health. So I have a son that had a massive car accident where someone ran him down and left him for dead in the street, severe traumatic brain injury. And as I started to study this, and I was at a really great lecture in New York City at the Integrative Healthcare Symposium, and they had this doctor who's been doing a lot of work in this, Dr. William Seeds, and he was talking about it for weight loss. I went up to him afterwards. I go, I want to know about the neuroregenerative stuff. And he goes, it's profound. And so I put my son on it, and like, I will keep him on it. I'm cycling him on it, and he'll stay on it. And I think what we're going to find is that the benefits go way past the benefits of just helping with weight loss. And so, and honestly, these are peptides, whether it's liraglutide, semaglutide, tirzepatide. I think we're going to get more and more of these peptides. We're going to get such incredible stuff, which means that, you look at it and go, I think the bigger issue is the pharmaceutical companies are scared, because reality is you can take something like Ozempic, you can pull the peptide out, semaglutide, you could compound it with B6, and now it's off patent. And that's the bigger challenge, is we could get rid of diabetes. Right. We get so I know people are up in arms. I'm like, look at the science. Yeah. And look at the problem we have. And unless you have a better solution out there, because I don't see it, I said, finally, you give people some hope again.
I think that this is such a different perspective than most people bring to the table. And I love that you're offering it, because I think that most people aren't looking at the big problem of like the fact that I thought it was 12% and you said 7% of people are.
It was 12%. That was pre-pandemic.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Wild. So when we think about I think that I know there are so many different areas that you help people, but a lot of women in, and I think that a lot of it has to do with weight loss post 40. So that was the reason that I asked about the Ozempic in the first place, is because so many of my clients will come to me and say, hey, I'm 46, I'm gaining weight. Why is this happening to women later on in life?
And here's the interesting piece of it, because if you look at the research, they go, your metabolism doesn't really start to shift till 60.
Okay.
So what's going on? And I go, but that is not the only piece here.
Yes.
It's the hormonal shift early on. And calories count, but where they come from, the source counts more. We've got to look at all of this, because it's very different if you're eating a 20% protein diet or 25% protein diet, or if you're eating a 10% protein diet. Very different thermic effect of food. So we have to realize that our body is not a bank account. It's a chemistry lab. And while calories count, you just can't eat unlimited amounts of healthy food. Too much is unhealthy. And if you've got a calorie excess, it's going to go somewhere, and likely it's going to get stored as fat, right?
So is for everyone, is that based like the calorie number? Because I think that this is a question a lot of women have. Is it going to be different for everybody in terms of what number they should, be in the range of day-to-day?
Yeah, let's break down calories. But before that, so if metabolism doesn't really shift until say we're 60, and we should really talk about what impacts metabolism too. What is changing then? And what's changing are hormones, right? And the first thing that can start to happen is stress hormones and thyroid. And if those are wonky, then you're really going to be in trouble. So like, that's the first place to look and make sure they're optimized. Don't have the right, if you are doing lab levels of thyroid and you're dosing per that, like you're in trouble because they are not ideal. But you're optimizing thyroid, doing something to help with stress, because your adrenals are going to be the most important thing as you get perimenopause into menopause. And then you're going to start balancing your hormones as you start to go into that shift. Because if estrogen tanks, estrogen's what you need to burn fat and build muscle. Testosterone helps with building muscle, but so does estrogen. And estrogen's how you burn fat.
And as you get into your, 40s and 50s, all three of those hormones start to decline.
They're all going, everything's going. Likely thyroid will go down. It doesn't always, but a lot of people have thyroid issues. If your thyroid's not working well, you will have trouble balancing your other hormones. But what's happening here? Progesterone tends to go down first, but then testosterone and estrogen. That's why they say estrogen dominance. It's actually not that estrogen's high, it's that progesterone's low.
Right.
But when estrogen's going down, now you're losing your mood, you're losing your fat burning. And then you look at it and go, well, now if I'm starting to lose muscle, I will in fact start to lower my metabolism. It's just going to be a slower ride. But let's look at metabolism, because metabolism is, your basal metabolic rate, which is dictated by your age, your sex, how much muscle you have, and how well your thyroid's working. And you can test that and tell. So you could go do a breath test and see, what is your basal metabolic rate? What would happen if you just sat on the couch all day long? Then you have your daily energy expenditure. That's going to be that plus thermic effect of food. So, fat it's negligible, 0 to 3%. Carbohydrates, 5 to 10%. Protein, 20 to 30% of the calories that you eat in protein are used to digest and assimilate it. So there's the thermic effect of food. The other side is activity. And then there's 3 areas in there. I've broken them into 3. There's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And I think of that more as like, as you can tell, I'm like this. I tend to fidget and move a lot. And what they've seen in studies is that thinner people tend to fidget and move a lot. It's subconscious. I'm not thinking, gee, I think I'll fidget, fidget and move a lot. But also, if you eat less, you tend to fidget and move less. Your body says, oh, conserve. If you eat more, your body tends to fidget more. And they've seen this when they've done, metabolic wards where they've given people over or under feeding.
That's fascinating.
Then you have your just activity, which you want to do as much as possible. And that's where I throw things in like walking, and I get a lot of heat on that. But I'm like, for me, exercise means that you overloaded your system. You created some stress, some tension, some damage. So your body had to repair and get stronger. And unless you are super deconditioned, that's not walking. That is not to say that I don't want you, we all should be moving a whole lot more. We're not moving anywhere near, but if you're saying, hey, I'm going to do 30 minutes of exercise a day, let's make it count. Let's do high intensity interval training. Let's do resistance training. Let's do stuff that your body has to recover from, repair, and you get stronger from, because that more muscle is the first place we can start to repair our insulin sensitivity, but also, as we know, is more metabolically active. So that's metabolism. And while it does decrease, and they see it really starting to decrease at 60, it's really much more in that 40s, 50s when, I hear people say, oh, nothing's happening. I'm like, you know what? You get in this body and tell me that. Like, I go, that has got to be a guy saying that, because no woman anywhere. I mean, there's going to be the rare unicorn that goes, that was easy. But you know what? For the most part, you're like, can I just unzip this, get out, and I'll come back later? Because what has happened?
Yes.
Who are you? And so it does get really hard during that time. And my advice is, and I wish I'd done this earlier. So it's like my advice to everyone everywhere, it's like why I went and found Dr. Joe Dispenza, is learn to manage your stress because your adrenal glands are everything as you're going through menopause. So the better you are at that, in terms of everything, longevity on down, it's going to make a massive, massive difference. And again, make sure your thyroid is, balanced. And then as soon as your hormones start to go, work with a good functional medicine doctor and get on hormones.
I think that you speak to, like, I guess, again, a lot of women in this age group. And I think there's a lot of confusion out there about bioidentical hormones. I think that there was a really bad era of time
of poor research that was misrepresented, that I've talked about on my podcast now multiple times, because that was just ridiculous.
It was it was horrible. And I think that everyone who comes to me now is like, oh my gosh, like it's going to give me cancer. So take the mic, please.
Well, and I can suggest some great guests for your podcast who could just refute that, that's their life's work. Like I had Dr. Jen Simmons, who's a breast cancer doc, and Dr. Felice Gersh, who's been, a hormone doc for years. And they're both like, this is the stupidest study. Like everyone's unpacked that study and said, the risk in breast cancer, when you got down to it, was an insignificant difference. There was no difference.
No statistical.
The challenge is when you look at what women die from, they have very low cardiovascular risk until they go through menopause. And then their risk matches that of men. And then they die, 50% or more of women die from heart disease.
Right.
But again, it doesn't happen till after menopause, because they are cardio protected till that point.
Because the estrogen is like good.
Yeah. And then you look at it and go, there's all this fear around breast cancer. The reality is that's not what's taking us out. And that study didn't show it. It was insignificant. The way that they reported it was wrong. Yeah. So what we need to worry about is our heart. We need to worry about our brain, and we need to worry about our bones. When you look at what happens when you go on hormones, you now protect your brain, you protect your heart, you protect your bones. I used to see a lot of clients one-on-one, and I was working out of one office where I would help one of the doctors and review the labs and put them on nutrition and lifestyle protocols. And it was interesting because before I ever saw the client, I knew if they were on hormones or not. They'd come in, and let's say they were 55 to 60. If they weren't on hormones, their HSCRP, which is a measure of inflammation, was high. Their Lp(a) was high. Their LDL was high. Their ApoB was high. Like you could see every marker that indicated that they are higher cardiac risk were all high.
So fascinating.
Like what the heck is going on, right? Yeah. Right. And then you contrast that one with the ones on hormones. And it was funny because this was out of a cosmetic surgery office. The doctor would say, yeah, we can tell who's on hormones because of their skin. I could tell from their labs.
From their lab work, that's a better tell.
Right. But you'll also see it in their body composition, because all of a sudden they go, their fat changes. My mom called it shifting sands. And I'm like, I'm certainly not going to have any sand shifting, because it was like, she goes, your butt becomes your gut. And I go, this is so not happening. Basically what happens is you lose that butt and thigh fat, and it goes as visceral adipose tissue. So you become like a potato on stilts. And now you've shifted off of the fat that you hated that didn't hurt you. It just like bugged you. Although nowadays it's great to have a big butt, but you went from like that fat that you didn't like to the fat that you can't see. That's actually the fat that can kill you.
Are you exhausted trying to find solutions for your hormonal imbalances, or trying to figure out why you have these symptoms, whether it's that you can't sleep, or you're exhausted all the time, or you feel like you're super bloated and you can't button your jeans, or you can't lose those last 5 pounds? Whatever it is, look no further, because I spent so many years of my life trying to search for answers and going from doctor to doctor. I put together all of the knowledge that I accumulated over those years and put it into a 17-week health and hormones e-course. It is this comprehensive program that covers a wide range of hormonal imbalances, from adrenal and thyroid issues to menstrual irregularities and fertility problems, and everything in between. If you have been battling with weight loss, metabolism, digestion, bloating, sleep, energy, anxiety, irritability, whatever it is, we've got you covered. What sets this course apart is that I'm all about holistic solutions. I believe in addressing the root cause of hormonal imbalances and providing you with the tools that you need to rebalance your hormones naturally, because it is possible. But that's not all. Today, I'm really excited because we're offering our podcast listeners something really special. When you enroll in our Health and Hormones e-course, you're going to receive an emailed lab review at no additional cost. I want to ensure that you have the most personalized and effective approach to regain your hormonal balance. So if you're ready to take care of your hormones in a really natural way and find the solutions that you've been looking for, you can join us for a free webinar where we're going to discuss the most common catalysts for hormonal imbalance and share some of the top solutions to help you reverse and address them. It's your chance to gain these really valuable insights and take the first steps to a healthier and happier you. And the best part is that when you enroll in the Health and Hormones e-course during the webinar, we are offering you that email lab review complimentary on us. It's our way of showing you just how committed we are to helping you achieve your wellness goals. So don't wait any longer. Visit us at our website, www.wellnessbykelley.com, and sign up for our free webinar and gain some really valuable knowledge to your hormonal health. When you're ready to take action, enroll in that Health and Hormones course and get that emailed lab review on us. It's time to take charge of your health and well-being before the end of the year. Get started now at www.wellnessbykelley.com.
So when we think about estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, bioidentical hormone replacement in those later years of life, or 40s, 50s, 60s, what do you recommend that women take all three? Should they just be taking something, like whatever their body needs at the time? Talk to me a little bit about that so women can have more information when they're going to talk to their doctor.
So since I'm not a doctor and don't play one on podcasts, I will tell you I was very fortunate because I had a great teacher in all of this, Dr. Diana Schwartzbein. And then I also went and taught courses around on weight loss resistance. And part of it was balancing sex hormones. And so I think what you have to do is really start to be very aware of the symptoms of when hormones start to shift.
Yeah.
Like, I knew when my thyroid went down, like right away, because I could tell all the things. All of a sudden I was cold. I was starting to lose the outer third of my eyebrows. I got constipated, boom. And my TSH, by the way, went from, it was normally around 1, it went up to 2.4. And that for me was hypothyroid. Everything.
Which for most women, it's like, what they consider the normal range or whatever is like 4.5, 5.
Yeah, so the normal range is ridiculous. Then you got to look at, okay, what are the symptoms? What are the symptoms when progesterone's going low? That can be poor sleep, some depression. What's the symptoms for estrogen? It can be same thing, poor, a little bit of depression. But for me, my gums started to bleed and I couldn't recover from the gym. And so, it's being very aware of your body and what's going on, and then understanding and working with the functional medicine doctor as you're going through this to start to balance this stuff, because you can't balance it directly to a lab test because the lab tests are changing so quickly, right? It's not like you take a lab once a month and that's going to stay the same. It's not. It's changing all throughout the month. So you have to do labs plus symptoms, working with your doctor to get to that dose. Once you're past it, once you're in postmenopause, so much easier. Nothing's changing. It's like the greatest ever. It's that time when I call it, I live on a canal and we go and paddleboard, and sometimes you start out and it looks totally calm, and totally calm is like postmenopause.
Yeah.
And then you go out and it's actually very windy and it's like up and down bouncing. And you're like, that's what it feels like. You're trying to balance everything in the middle of that. And I think the big takeaway here is, you don't need to suffer, number one, but also doing this is how you're going to protect your bones and your heart
and your heart
and your risk of dementia. I mean, it's super duper important. And the sooner you start, the better, like from when these things start to go sideways. You don't need to wait till, you're already in menopause and miserable. Like, why do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is a really, really great one, because I know that there are so many women out there.
Suffering. But here's the other thing. I think that what you should do is do as much as you possibly can through diet and lifestyle. like as much as you possibly can. So that means, that you're doing something for stress management. I'm a big Dr. Joe Dispenza fan, that you're doing exercise and the right type of exercise. That does not mean doing a bunch of cardio, right? It's doing high intensity interval training because that is going to help you handle stress better. That's doing some yoga for your parasympathetic, but only a little bit. You don't do 12 yoga classes a week and think that's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And then resistance training. And then, of course, eating correctly and making sure you're getting protein first and have good blood sugar balance. And then you add in, you see what you need hormonally. Like, don't think that you can do all these poor lifestyle habits and take hormones and be fine. That's like, no,
it's not going to work that way. And I love that you said it because it kind of brings me back to what I wanted to ask following the Ozempic question was this like, okay, like, if we keep those same habits, like anyone who's like maybe taking a peptide or taking hormones, it's like, that's just putting a Band-Aid on it. So we have to change our lifestyle and our habits along with that. And so for those people out there who are doing a diet or maybe taking a peptide, what are the best like tips that you would give somebody to not lose muscle? Because I think that's the biggest thing that we don't want to have happen.
Well, first of all, you've got to actually know what you have. You wouldn't sit there and go, I'm going to book a flight to New York City. And then you get on, cheap tickets, but you don't have a starting point. That wouldn't work. So you have to know where your starting point is. I think that we should all be getting a DEXA twice a year. That would be,
Can you talk about what that is? Because I know what it is, but I think a lot of people won't.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It used to be something that they would recommend for women 50 years old for bone density.
Okay.
And it struck me, it's like, first of all, we should be doing this with our teenage girls, not waiting until they're 50. Like, we need to do it during the time when we really can make a difference. But what's cool about it is now they've got new software. So not only can we look at bone density, we can also look at skeletal muscle. We can look at body fat, and we can look at not just body fat, what's subcutaneous fat, what's visceral adipose tissue, how does your muscle look? Is it a fillet? Is it a ribeye? Hint, hint, you want a fillet. Are your muscles even? So this is super important because for most women, and, I'll share the story of one of my clients, Vicky, early on. Now, I've always used body composition, but I did bioimpedance. And while you can go get a DEXA like every 6 months, and it's inexpensive, it's $100 or less. And you don't need to get a prescription or anything. It's like $100 or less. A lot of gyms do it now. It takes 10 minutes, right? It's super easy. And so you do a DEXA to get all of that information, and then you'll see, like there's a little index called the appendicular lean mass index. You want to be 25th percentile or better there, right? And so you look at all of this, and now you can know, what do I need to do? Do I need to lose visceral adipose tissue? You want that number as close to zero as possible. How's my overall body fat looking? But more importantly, do I need to add muscle? Do I want to hold on to, or do I need to build muscle? I would argue that the smartest thing that we can possibly do is pack on as much muscle as humanly possible for as long as possible, so that when we do start to lose it, we have more to lose, because it is not easy for us to pack on muscle. I know the minute I say that, I strike fear in women's hearts. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get big. And I will say 40 years of this, right? I used to take women on field trips to Gold's Gym in Venice, the mecca of bodybuilding. I have never seen a woman get big unless she's been taking anabolic steroids, ever. I've helped weight train more women. Never happens. Women get smaller when they weight train because muscle is metabolic spank. So it holds everything in tighter, right? And boosts your metabolism, requires more that muscle protein turnover is an expensive process. I mean, if anyone
sees you, you're like your own testimonial. You've got like these super toned, but like very lean arms, like, and body, like you look amazing.
What's so funny is the biggest question I get asked is, how'd you get those arms? And then the next, right out of that, then they'll say, but I don't want to get bulky. I go, well, then you will get bulky if you don't work out, if you sit on the couch, and if you eat a bunch of ultra processed foods, you'll get bulky. Yeah. But don't do that. And so if you want to hold on to or build muscle, and I'd argue probably build, and I'm going to give this story of Vicky, and then I'll tell you what you have to do. So Vicky comes to me, and Vicky, probably her BMI was maybe, 21. Like her weight was totally normal. She goes, I want to lose 10 pounds. And I look at her and she's she's skinny fat, right? She's that what we call normal weight obesity. I think she was like 26% body fat.
Okay.
I go, all right. So, and I'm thinking in my mind, she's like, she does not need to lose any weight. She needs to lose fat, put on muscle. Well, I had a segmental bioimpedance scale. This is not as accurate as the DEXA. However, it is pretty darn accurate. And what it would allow me to do, this was a really like one of its first generation, like $5,000 machine. It allowed me to find out body fat and lean tissue all throughout the body because of the way you held on to it. And the way that it did it by looking at total body water. And more water means higher muscle mass, right? Less water, lower muscle mass. It's why when people try to do things like dehydrate themselves for a weigh-in, they just look like a fluffy person. And you can tell what they did. So we worked together for a year. At the end of the year, she dropped 2 sizes. She dropped 10 pounds of fat. She put on 10 pounds of muscle, and she was unhappy.
What?
Right. Because she didn't lose 10
The 10
pounds.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, she looked like an entirely different body. I just went, my husband and I was, for my 60th birthday, I was like, I want to get in the best shape of my life at 60. I want to see if I can be stronger, leaner, etc. And I'd done my last DEXA when I was 39, and I was 13.9% body fat and 154. So we go in to do it again to get a baseline. And I'm 154 pounds and 13.9% body fat still, which is like amazing, because most people will say, I weigh the same as I did in high school. I'm like, you might weigh the same, but it's not the same weight. Right. So my husband and I go in. So Tim weighs the same as he's weighed in high school, except Tim's body fat was 25%.
Wow.
Wow. Right. And I was like, wow. Well, and so I'm trying not to be like, whoa, honey, like, whoa. And, men have only 3 to 5% essential fat. So an athletic man will be somewhere in the 5 to 12% range, a healthy male somewhere in the 10 to 15%, maybe 18%. And what's interesting is with the norms I learned in doctoral school, they've lifted them all up higher now. And I go, no, that's ridiculous. I'm going with the norms that I originally learned because I don't buy that. Like, too much body fat is not healthy. And so I was like, wow. And my first thing was like, gee, do you think the machine's wrong? And like, no, the machine is not wrong. So we go on a plan together. Mm-hmm. And, he's on creatine. I think every woman should be on creatine. Even more so than men. We go on creatine. I make sure I'd already been optimizing my protein. I lifted a little bit higher, but he now was tracking, which I couldn't get him to track before. And because he needed, I was having him do 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Do you think that women should be doing that too? 1 pound? Okay.
Yes.
Or 1 gram per pound.
Yes. And I'll explain why in a moment, but yes.
Okay.
So, and what you can do if you're going to be kind of like, you just can't get it in. Anyway, because he needed 180 grams, he was eating 4 times a day. So he would basically eat, between about 8 a.m., we get up at 6:30, meditate. He'd have something around 8:30. And then we generally eat dinner sometimes 6:30. So he's now eating 4 meals. He's getting in his protein. He's doing his creatine, and he starts lifting heavier. And in 6 months, and his testosterone had been at 700, and now he went and finally started working on that too, got it up to 1,000.
Wow.
And so because around men, it's starting to happen a lot earlier, I think, because of stress and all the xenoestrogens and stuff. But men generally around 57, their testosterone starts to go down, and he was 58. So 6 months, drops 20 pounds of fat, puts on 19 pounds of muscle. And I will tell you, I said, have you, because we've been together 8 years ago, have you ever looked like this in your life? And he goes, no. I go, how cool that at 59 now, you look better than you ever have in your life. And I went down from 13.9 to 11% body fat. Now that's ridiculously low for a woman, but I've been down. I'm a very, very lean mesomorphic female. And I think that the takeaway there really is you find the thing that's best for you. Like, where do you feel best? What's your best body fat for you? Now, I like to push people on protein. Like, to me, the bare minimum, and I have a protein calculator I use with people, 0.7 grams per pound of target body weight to me is like minimal. I like to push up to 1 because women tend to do more plant-based, which means they're not getting the right balance of the 9 essential amino acids.
Right.
And when you eat protein first, which is how I have people do it, always start with the protein so you make sure you get it in. You're not hungry.
After. Yeah.
Right? You're just not hungry. Like,
satisfied.
Right? And the study shows that when you eat protein first, you actually make better food choices too. Totally. And, there's been enough research now showing that if all you did, like the obesogenic formula is to eat a low protein, high carb, high fat diet. That is like, 10 to 12% protein and the rest from carbs and fat is a recipe for weight gain.
I literally saw you on your Instagram saying that about avocado toast like a couple of weeks ago. You're like, eat a piece of avocado toast if you want to gain a little bit of weight. I
knew that would, and I go, this is going to really make people crazy. And then I always use Tim. So Tim's always the fall guy with these things. But, because you see people do that. They sit down and they have breakfast. They have avocado toast. I'm like, what are you doing? You just ate a big fat carb bomb. You wouldn't sit down and eat like, a chocolate croissant, I hope, or a cinnamon bun.
Yeah.
But you're doing something similar here by eating, granted, they're healthier fats, but come on. You just loaded yourself with carbs and fat with really no protein. Terrible. And also, once you start to get, maybe even 30 plus, but definitely 40 plus, especially if you're not doing resistance training, if you've, fallen into that trap of I'll just do lots of cardio. Back when I was in grad school, we were taught that you don't lift weight till you lose the weight. I go, that is dumb. I actually rebelled against that early on because I was like, this doesn't work.
I literally fell into that trap in my 20s, and that was what dysregulated my thyroid because I was doing so much cardio, not eating enough calories, not eating enough protein. It was the whole problem. Everything.
It's terrible. And then the more you do, the more you have to do. I remember early, this was like 30 years ago, I found this study that showed that people who are controlling their weight through cardio, the minute they stopped, they started gaining weight. And I was like, well, of course, because your body you're losing muscle as you're doing more and more cardio.
Yep.
So you're now metabolically adapting to a lower amount and your body is used to all that exercise that you just stopped. You just completely destroyed your metabolism, like awful.
I love that
you got all that adrenal problem.
I want to talk about that next. But one thing I have to say is that I love that you brought up the thing about the scale, because I think so many of us women out there run our lives based on the number on the scale. And it's really not what matters. And so I think that everyone out there, go get a DEXA scan. I think that that's a
DEXA scan, then get a bioimpedance scale for home that does a Bluetooth to your phone, and then take the average over the week and focus on your skeletal muscle and focus on improving that. And it will be like watching grass grow. For everyone worried that they're going to get bulky, if you put on a pound of muscle a month, you are lucky.
Okay.
That's why when I hear that, I go, no. It is not easy to put on muscle.
So the last question on this topic before we move on to the adrenals is, for the average woman out there, what is a good percentage of body fat and a good percentage of lean muscle to have? Like, what's ideal for all of us?
It's really interesting that we don't have norms on skeletal muscle. And so I will tell you what I did years ago. So when I was in grad school, I was taught that that women should be between 18 and 22% body fat, up to 25% as we get older. But then 30% or more meant that you were insulin resistant. Now I'm looking at the norms. I was like, okay, I'm writing a new book. I'm like, oh, what do the norms say now? They say, 22 to 30%. I go, that is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So I still go with the 18 to 22%, maybe up to 25%. However, it's not just body fat. It's where that fat is. Because if you're 25% body fat and you basically have very low to no visceral adipose tissue, probably totally cool, right? But if you've got 22% body fat and you've got, say, 20% of your body fat is visceral adipose tissue, problem. So you got to know where that fat is. Now, what I started to do, and I didn't, this was way back when I was using skin fold calipers and a bioimpedance scale. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do to kind of figure out how metabolically unhealthy they are is I'm going to find the difference between their skin folds and their bioimpedance. Because when you get a lot of visceral adipose tissue, where you do a skin fold around someone's abdomen, you basically can't pinch because it protrudes so much that and so I go, I'll use that disparity to kind of indicate metabolic unhealth. And then what I did was I then took that and I was like, there were no fat-free mass norms, and we couldn't dissect back then fat-free mass versus skeletal mass, muscle mass. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do fat-free mass norms based on subtracting body fat, right, and doing normal weight. But it's still to this day, it's like, okay, where are those muscle mass norms? And what I think really what you have to do, because there's also some people, I am a natural mesomorph. It's funny, I'm adopted. I met my birth mom when I was 25. And I remember looking straight, like I get off a plane, look at her, same haircut, same outfit, and same thing. Like both of us can build muscle fairly easily. My husband is an ectomorph. His kids are ectomorphs. They just do not build muscle very easily. So, part of it is like, what's going to be the best thing for you? Right? Are you more endo, ecto, meso? Are you one of those? Right. And then monitoring that skeletal muscle and really trying to get because it's so hard to put muscle mass on, easier to keep it, but harder to get it on. And it makes such a difference in your metabolism. It's like a sugar sponge. Besides helping you become insulin sensitive, it gives your carbohydrates a place to land, your muscles, rather than in your belly.
Yes.
So much better, right? I mean, much better stuff, much better for your metabolism. So I think the answer is look at where you're at now. And again, see, with DEXA, it'll give you norms. So you can see where you are for your age, and you want to be in the top percentile for your age. But what you really want to do is see if you can continue to improve that and hold on to it. And it's not just about muscle, it's quality muscle. Like you don't want big fatty muscles. You do not want ribeyes, right?
You said, fillets.
Right. And you also have got to think about, there's in muscle, there are two types of fibers, type 1 and type 2. And within type 2, there's two types of fibers. One can kind of shift and look like a type 1, but your body, the more you use of a fiber, the more that fiber is going to be recruited. So if you're doing loads of cardio and loads of light stuff, that's more of the type 1 slow twitch fibers. Hard stuff is fast twitch. When we start to age, the muscle fibers we lose are these fast twitch muscles. These are the fibers that help you like lift a weight, like pick a big heavy weight up or jump up. And what we start to lose as we age is speed and strength. And so my big emphasis for people is as you age, you've got to be building that powerful, strong muscle. So you've got to incorporate things like speed and jumping and throwing, the stuff that you stop doing. And if you stop doing it, then, those muscles, like the fibers aren't needed and they go away.
Right. Okay. I know I said last question on this topic, but how many days a week are you weight training, JJ?
So I'm working on I actually built out a whole addition in my house to start taping exercise videos.
Love
and
it.
I'm really I've been really digging through the research, which of course it's like all over the place. Is like, what's the minimum viable dose? I love weight training. I've been weight training since I was 16 years old, went in high school gym with the bros because we didn't have gyms back then, and trained with the football players. So I happen to really, really like weight training, and I would preferentially do that over anything else. So I have to like force myself to go to HIIT training.
Right.
And what I would say is you really want to hit, there's 4 clear body parts. Upper body pushing, that would be things like a push-up or an overhead press that work your chest and your shoulders and your triceps. And the big thing I share is that like I don't do bicep curls and tricep extensions and these little things I see people doing. I do big compound movements because I'm not training to get better at working out in the gym. I'm training to get better at being at life, right?
Yeah.
And when you work an overhead press or a push-up, or you're doing upper body pulling that works your lats and biceps and shoulders, like pull-ups and bent over rows, you're working your biceps and triceps. So guess what? You'll get great arms, but you'll also get great chest and lats, and it's very functional and much more metabolically costly. And then there's hip hinging, things like squats and deadlifts and stuff like that. And then there's power core. But I believe that if you're doing yoga and you are doing things like pull-ups and push-ups and squats, you should be engaging your core. So you don't need to emphasize as much. Ideally, you hit each body part twice a week.
Okay.
And if you're really trying for hypertrophy, it would be 3 times a week. But with the caveat of you've got to make sure that you're recovering. And that's the issue, because you build muscle in recovery. You go in, you work out, you put your body under tension, your muscles under tension, you stress them, you're going to micro damage them. They got to recover. And if you do not give them adequate time to recover, then they are not going to repair and go into hypertrophy. And get stronger. So that's the piece, and it may be, depending on what's going on, that you need those 3 days to recover, that you might have to do all your body parts Monday and Thursday, or maybe you do upper body pushing and pulling on Monday and lower body and some HIIT on Tuesday, and then you go back on Thursday. So it really kind of is, are you recovering? And how would you know? You can look at your resting heart rate. If it's slightly elevated, that's a sign of a little too much training. You can feel how sore you are. If you're sore at a joint site, that's definitely a problem. Grip strength. I think that we should, just like we have a bioimpedance machine, I do grip strength, and you want to check your grip strength and make sure it's improving over time. But if it's not, if like you go to test your grip strength in the morning before working out and it's weak that day, you didn't recover. Okay. So that's another one too.
Those are all really helpful tools. And I think they allow people to say like, okay, I can start a little smaller and then build up to where I want to be. You definitely
want to start. Like I'm just put together here's how you ease into this. Cause I still remember as I was starting to learn how to teach resistance training, and I had my friend who came in as my guinea pig. And she was, I think, 15 years older than me. And I bring her into the gym and we did a 2-hour training session. It was her first weight training session, 2 hours. And she was so destroyed. She literally couldn't get out of bed for days. And I was like, well, sorry, learned what not to do pretty quickly. And, if you go in there and get yourself really sore, you're going to be like, I'm not doing that again. Yeah. So I always show people like your first time when you go in to work out really should be just range of motion, getting used to the movement and used to the form, because technique will always be the most important thing. Like you never sacrifice form for weight. Yeah. So a lot of it at first is just is working through how to do a squat correctly, or working through how to do a push-up. And it might even be a push-up against a wall to start. It doesn't matter, right? It just matters that you're doing it.
Yeah. 100%. I think that this whole conversation has given so much information on like where to start with resistance training, where to start with protein intake. And I think that so many women, for the sake of metabolic health, really need that information. So I think that that's great. The other thing that I think that we could all use a little help with, and you've touched on it a few times, is managing our stress. I don't think I've talked to one private client of mine in the last, I've been doing this for years now, but like that doesn't feel like they're, for the most part, overwhelmed or in a state of like feeling burnout and exhausted. And so can you talk to us a little bit about, one, why you think that that's such a trend? And two, I know you have so many tools, but so if you have any like that you feel like would be helpful to share.
Yeah. And one more thing just on, so I can put the protein, tie a bow on protein.
Yes.
To make sure, like you got to get at least 30 grams of animal protein or 40 grams of plant protein at especially your morning and evening meal, 100 grams or more overall. And if you're struggling at all, I have people do essential amino acids in the morning too with that first meal to just make sure they hit it. So that's a cheat. This is the interesting thing with stress.
Do you sell essential amino acids on your site?
I do. I got creatine. I got essential. I just went, you know what? I'm just going to do the things that I know. Like I get up in the morning, I go to the gym with my essential amino acids and electrolytes. Electrolytes, super important at the gym. You want to make sure that you've got your electrolytes going on. I take creatine every single day. I put it in my bone broth shake. That's, high collagen. And I take protein digestive enzymes, and especially people, if they've been more vegan, vegetarian, and now are starting to push up their protein.
Yeah.
protein digestive enzymes are super important because your stomach acid probably isn't used to what you're about to do. So you want to bring that up. With stress, I didn't start really focusing on managing my stress well until 2021. That was this dumb thing. And so learn from my mistake. I will naturally have pretty high stress tolerance. And I've been through a lot of ridiculously stressful situations, like ridiculously stressful. And I think that when you learn how to handle those, your body just starts to tolerate higher levels of stress. However, what I used to use solely for stress tolerance was a lot of supplements and exercise, and especially high intensity interval training. And almost like feels like, when you see an animal, shake it off. Like when my son was in a coma in the hospital, I would literally run up and down the stairs and I felt like I was shaking it off. And so that would work. And that's what I always told myself, okay, this is how I get rid of it. This feels better. I would try to do something like meditation, and I just couldn't get out of the way of myself.
Remember the feeling.
And then during the pandemic, I went, you know what? Like, I'm going to go to a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, because it was during the pandemic, everything was canceled, and I went to it. It was a week of meditation. Now you're talking about someone who like did 1 week of like, TM and kind of failed. So here I am now, where I've never done more than 40 minutes a day for 5 days. And I'm now in a week of meditation. That's 35 hours of meditation, which I did not know going in. Which is because I loved his stuff. I listened to all his stuff. I thought, this is great. I love what he teaches. I figured it'd be like, meditation for an hour a day. And then he'd teach and we'd go out to dinner and it would be fun. You get there. He starts somewhere between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. Wow. And you go every night till like 7 o'clock at night or later. And, and you get a little
on my 2024 bucket list. I cannot wait.
It's amazing. And I'm glad I didn't know that the first time, but the first time I'm in there with all my friends who are having these amazing quantum experiences. And I am in the middle of this whole thing, having a fight with myself. Yeah. And by the end of that first week, I went, you know what? This is like taking your parasympathetic nervous system to the gym. I need to commit to this. And so I immediately signed up for the next one in June. Amazing. And did it again and got a little further. And I think the challenge with meditation is I like to know that I'm doing something right. You go to the gym, you lift weights, you're like, okay, I was lifting 20s, now I'm lifting 25s, and you can see the progress, but I'm like, here, I have no clue. Like, what's going on? So after June, I signed up for September, then I signed up for January. I literally was like, I'm in, I'm going to do this. And it wasn't like some people go in and they have this major experience. It was a shift. Yeah. That happened over time. And it was interesting because this year, like in the matter of a couple of months, my mom, who was 93, who was like Energizer Bunny, everything was perfect, living independently, never has any issues, went poof downhill and passed away. I got diagnosed with EIN, this potential that I had cancer. I had to have a hysterectomy, totaled my Tesla, and had the hurricane hit our house, flooded our garage, took out a bunch of stuff. Oh my gosh. And it was like, and none of it fazed me whatsoever. None of it, like, I just was like, oh, like someone's like, oh, what's been going on? Oh, yeah. And it just made me like, I just went, because I always had reason, but like, I chronically since my 20s had shortness of breath. I started doing Dr. Joe, shortness of breath went away. I also dropped 5 pounds. I told him, I go, it's so interesting. And I was like, I know why this happened. I know the cortisol effect, but it's kind of crazy. Like I went to do the DEX, I have no visceral adipose tissue. I go, it's the meditating. In fact, when they went to do the hysterectomy CAT scan, they're like, you've got no fat in there. I go, yep, nope, no fat, nothing. And I went and meditated, like, because they were like, oh, we're going to, whatever we find in there, we'll get it out. It'll be fine. They go, there was nothing in there. It was perfect. I go, I know, I meditated on it. It was like it cleared it. So, that would be my biggest recommendation, is that even if it's 15 minutes, and one of the things I love that Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about is, just like with exercise, when you get better at it, you don't have to keep the effect, you don't have to do as much. So, we do anywhere between 15 and 40 minutes every morning is what we do. And it has made such a profound shift. I'm much more effective. I'm much calmer. I don't have shortness of breath anymore. It's been amazing. And the thing about stress is it really is, when you think about it, it's your perception of it. I remember back when I was seeing clients, I had a client who was so stressed out. And I was at the time a single mom with 2 small boys, right? That's why I was like, oh, you got boys. I get it. I had 2 small boys. One had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. My dad was dying of cancer, and I'm the sole financial support, going through a contentious divorce. And I'm at this gal's house, doing her nutrition and fitness stuff. And she is as stressed as she can possibly be. Now, she lives in this gorgeous, huge mansion. Her husband is a doctor. He's super successful. She doesn't work. She's a stay-at-home mom with a daughter with 1 child who's a perfect child, right? And she's stressed because she's putting on her bat mitzvah. And I'm thinking to myself, you have no idea what's stressing you. But that's the reality, is that was very stressful to her.
Yes.
And what I think we need to really learn, because if you look at the people who are most successful at life, they just learn how to buffer that, become more resilient, be able to handle higher levels of stress, because it's not like this is going away. Like
Right.
Whenever they talk about the people who live a stress-free life, I go, who is that? Is that like my little dog? I mean, like, who has a stress-free life? And the reality is, like, I work out hard to stress my body so it gets stronger. Like, you learn how to handle stress, you can tolerate higher levels of stress. Like, you go through what I just went through, and it didn't actually really
Stress you out.
phase me. I was like, oh, cool, I can get a new car. I was like, what are you going to do? Like, no one got hurt. So I think the answer, like, especially as you're starting to go, when you hit 40 plus, when you are chronically stressed, it's not a badge of honor. The big thing I think we women have to do, because we are really the CEOs of the house, no matter what's happened here, with all that's happened, where men and women are both working, it still is on us to plan our kids' birthday parties and to make sure that, like, it's like still on us, man. It still is. Like, you look at it. I remember I was dating this guy, and he'd come over, he would stay at my house half the week when we was in the desert. And he'd walk into the house and go, oh my God, I'm so tired. Aren't you tired? And he'd flop on the couch and turn the TV on. And I'm like, of course I'm tired.
Yeah. And now I have to put the kids to bed
and now I'm making dinner. And he goes, God, I'd help you put the dishes away, but I don't know where they go. And I'm like, how I didn't like throw that guy out of the house, or stab him. I don't know. But, no, I'm tired. I worked all day long. Now I've started my second job. Now I'm helping them with homework, making lunches, doing, tired doesn't even begin to cover it. But if I had it all to do over again, I would have looked at what didn't need to happen. Because there's a whole lot of stuff we do. When my son got hit and I had to really look at, like, what really needs to happen, there's a lot of stuff you don't need to do, or that you can get help with.
Yeah.
Right. And, I think we don't ask for enough help. We try to be super women. Forget it. Stop it. It's ridiculous, right? Take a lot of that stuff off your plate.
I think that, like, the meditation practice too does start to shift your perspective on what the priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
At least it did for me. It was like everything was a red alarm fire. And now it's like, okay, I can sit here, ground myself, and I see, okay, this is what actually needs to happen today, versus like making myself crazy over all of the things needing to happen.
And the perfect Halloween costume and this, and you're like, breathe. Like, it's breathe. And by the way, like, I think about this, and man, if I had a meditation practice and gotten my kids into a meditation practice.
Oh gosh, yes.
Can you imagine? You have that opportunity. Like, I was like, okay, we're going to eat healthy and exercise, but boy, had I gotten the meditation practice, my son, who has the traumatic brain injury, has gotten super into breath work and meditation. So
I love that.
Gosh, like, what a difference when they have that early on. Like, you look at what kids should learn in school, and it's like relationships, finance, meditation, exercise, and diet, and the rest of the stuff, forget it. It's just silly.
I literally could not agree with you more. If we could reconfigure that, like, that would be great.
Right? Start our own school. It would be the most popular school. We could franchise it like crazy. So for our next business, that's what we can do.
That's what we're doing. I love it. I really wanted to talk to you today, and I know we're out of time, about your book, because when I was first, The Virgin Diet, because when I was first healing my gut, that was my go-to read, and it absolutely changed my life. So if just give people the rundown, because I know that was like years ago, but it changed my life in terms of like understanding food intolerances and all of this different stuff. So give people a little rundown on that.
It's so simple too, right? What happened was I was in that course that teaching doctors overcoming weight loss resistance.
Yeah.
One of the things I was using was a food sensitivity test.
Yes.
And so I got to see tons of results of these food sensitivity tests. And what this test would show, it's not an allergy.
Yeah.
It is when your small intestine becomes more permeable than it should be, which can happen due to stress. Like that's the biggest culprit, stress, but gluten does it too. Fructose does it too. Pain medications do it too. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going to disrupt the gut microbiome, but also make it more permeable. When it's more permeable, then food particles can pass through, and right below that is your immune system. And your immune system goes, what is this? And starts to make these antibodies that will grab onto the protein in the food and create immune complexes. And if it's just a little bit, that your body gets rid of it. But the thing is, we eat the same things all the time. And so what I saw when I was looking at these tests is dairy and eggs, top, corn, soy, peanuts, second tier, were like people were reacting to these. And if you saw it in the test, it meant that they had created these antibodies and they were having a reaction, and it would create low-grade systemic inflammation. It would cause gas and bloating and joint pain and headaches and skin issues. And worst of all, you would start to crave the very food that was hurting you, because these antibodies would then, your body would start to just produce them, and they go, okay, where's the cheese, right? And when you pulled those foods out and you started to work to heal your gut, it's like the fire got put out. And so gluten is a different type of test, but gluten, and especially in glyphosates, which if you're having gluten, you're having glyphosates in the United States, makes your gut leakier. So first I was pulling out gluten, dairy, eggs, corn, soy, peanuts, because the test took 3 weeks. So in the interim, while I was waiting for the test, I just pulled the foods out. And then I went, wow, actually you don't need the test, because if you pull the foods out, start to do healing for the body, like bone broth protein, collagen, deep green leafies, then you can go back and challenge and see how your body reacts to these things. As I started to take it out and do it with groups, what I discovered is if I didn't pull out sugar, then they went and ate sugar. And I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Because they go, I got a gluten-free muffin. And I was like, stop it, And fructose causes your gut to get more leaky as well. And of course, we know fructose has all sorts of issues, which is what I wrote Sugar Impact Diet about. But what's amazing is, first of all, you can't eat ultra-processed foods when you don't eat gluten, dairy, eggs, corn, soy, peanuts, sugar, and artificial sweeteners. It pretty well takes that out. So that's hugely helpful. But you just feel so much better within a matter of days.
Literally.
Right. And it does something really important too. It makes you start to connect the dots between what you're eating and how you feel, which I feel like so many of the diets out there have taken us from being in the, director's role of our body and just said, this is what you eat. I'm like, well, what if that doesn't feel good? So now all of a sudden, it's, and along the lines of that is something like intuitive eating. I go, you can't have intuitive eating if people are eating ultra processed foods, because that's your body has no clue. It's being triggered by, man-made chemicals. So, this allowed you to really get back in touch.
I love that book, and I will recommend it forever, because it really, really works.
Thank you. And it's simple. It'll be like my next one is super simple, just like that, big needle movers, simple stuff that you can actually do.
Absolutely. So the last question that I ask every guest we have on the show is one piece of advice that you would have for anyone out there on how to balance the chaos, because we all live these chaotic, crazy lives. Like you said, the stress never goes away.
I actually think instead of balancing it, you just have to embrace it.
Yes.
Like right now, what you have, I think back to when my kids are 1 year apart. Right. So, boys are a whole special thing, as you know. If your house is quiet and you have young boys, something really bad has happened. Like, yes. I remember once the house was quiet and they decided to put our little pet bunny in a plastic bag and see what would happen to the bunny. I was like, oh no, if the house is quiet, something's on fire, something's, something
You're
bad
eating
happened.
Something weird. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. They're eating worms. Something bad happened. But you're going to miss that, Kate. I mean, so I don't think it's balance it. I don't think it's possible to balance it. Yeah. I think you balance you by making you the priority, which is so the antithesis of how most women put themselves. Like normally they don't even get on anywhere near the top 10 of their to-do list. What if you put yourself first so you could really take care of everybody and then embrace the chaos and have fun with it?
It's beautiful. Thank you, JJ. Where can everybody find you?
jjvirgin.com. And I have on there my protein calculator. So if you go in there, you can pop in, get the right protein for you, and then get started on eating protein first and all the great shifts that makes for you.
She had a new protein bar flavor come out today. I saw.
I know. We have a couple more coming out. Did the caramel calm come out today? Because this one is insanely good. So we have a couple new yummy things coming. So yes.
I love it. Okay. Thank you so much for your time, JJ. I really appreciate it. This was wonderful. I can't wait for our listeners to hear it.
Thank you.
I hope that you loved that episode and that you found some helpful tools and insights to help you heal and come back to the most vital version of yourself. If you did, please rate, review, and subscribe to our show. That's the best way to support us. You can follow me on Instagram at Wellness by Kelley. And sign up now for the 7-day free trial of the WBK app and our health and hormones course through Labor Day. When you do, you'll get 20% off of the course and 10% off the annual membership. For the course, use the code BalancingChaos20, that's BALANCINGCHAOS20. And for the membership, use the code BalancingChaos, all one word. In our course, you'll get access to an emailed lab review, plus protocols that are built out to help you heal whatever hormonal imbalance you're struggling with. For our membership, you'll receive a library of content in our app with low-impact workouts, blood sugar balancing recipes, and mindfulness meditations, all designed to help you balance your hormones naturally and feel like your most beautiful, joyful, and vital self. Thanks so much for joining me. See you in the next episode.